Hello, hello, and welcome to Practical Magic for Entrepreneurs, Doing the Impossible. I'm so glad that you have decided to join me for this amazing and informative webinar today. I promise I will give you practical tips of how you can use magic in your business today. And you actually might be wondering, if you're in the right place. Well, here's how to tell. If you've gotten tons of business education, but still something is not working in your business, or you're stuck at a certain level in your business and you can't get past whatever's keeping you there, or someone else perhaps seems to be holding the keys to the way things work. Well, you're doing all the right things perhaps, but you still can't make some of your life and your business work. Yeah. Well, if that's you, or if that's any part of you, then you're in the right place. Oh, and by the way, also, if you want magic, you're in the right place, right? What's the guarantee that magic will get what I want for me any faster than I'm already getting it, you might ask. Or you might ask, who is this sage guy and why should I listen to him about magic? Well, I'll tell you all about that in a few minutes. And I'll also tell you that there's no absolute hard and fast guarantee that magic will get you what you want. But as you'll find out later, magic will actually change the probability of you getting what you want. And it's certainly worth investigating, at least if for no other reason than that. You see, magic is just ancient technology that's been used for centuries, right? And it's been used actually effectively. This is a picture of me. Science came along about 350 years ago and told us that what we were doing that was working actually wasn't working because it couldn't be tested in the way that they wanted to test it. You see, ancient technology and the education of magic used to be done all the time, and things have changed now. You know, the knowledge that used to be only available to the very few, like the priest class or the intelligentsia, is now available to everyone, but only if you have eyes to see it and ears to hear it. So here's the deal. You can go with magic beyond the mundane world. With magic, you are in the invisible world, and the invisible world has tons of gifts for you. Now, I could come in here and do stage magic, or you know, the Chris Angel kind of magic, which is all either legerdemain or large stage magic. And legerdemain is essentially hand tricks, like sleight of hand, that convinces you that one thing is true when it's not. And I'm not going to do legerdemain, even though I do a magic trick at the beginning of every day of one of my workshops, and it's really fun because I come in and people are like, "Whoa, how did you do that?" And then I never tell them. But I do say that, you know, every wizard, it doesn't hurt to have a little magic in the back of your pocket with this kind of legerdemain to get people sit up and take notice. But the real teaching of magic is something else entirely. So there's a quote by Arthur C. Clarke that goes like this. You can read it. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Now, if you are going to do what we can do with any sentence that has an is in it, is that you can reverse it. So we can actually, the first step along the way is we can just reverse the predicate in the subject and the object, because you can say magic is indistinguishable from any sufficiently advanced technology, right? I mean, isn't it true that is in fact the case? And then we can further shift this sentence because look, if something's absolutely indistinguishable from something else, is there any real difference in it to our sensory system? No, there's not. So we can just take that part out, and we end up with the phrase, magic is advanced technology. Magic is advanced technology because magic is indistinguishable from advanced technology. Advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So that gets us started with Arthur C. Clarke. Now, I'm going to spend the next few minutes telling you why this is not such a radical idea. In fact, by the end of the webinar, I think that you'll agree with me that the technology of magic is quite powerful indeed. Now, if we know where to look for the magic and what the magic really means. So I want to define magic, and I want to define magical tools and what they mean. And finally, I want to say what I think a wizard is, because it's no surprise to you by now that I have a school for wizards, right? So let me start out by saying that I think you are a wizard. Yes, despite what you might think, I think you're a wizard. And by the time you get done with all of this webinar today, I think you might be convinced of it as well. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. In fact, I'm going to stop sharing the screen so you can actually see the real me. Oops. Well, here we go. Okay. There we go. Hi, it's me. So I just wanted to let you have a chance to be in the presence of me without a bunch of slides in front of me. And I want to tell you a little bit about myself. And I might have something to teach you about magic and wizardry, but one of the things that's true about me is that I'm a maker. I've always been a maker, and I've always made things, and sometimes those things are actually useful, and sometimes those things are not useful. And you read that by saying, you know, sometimes I make non-art and sometimes I make art, because art is typically considered to be non-useful. But what is non-useful really? So I did this my whole life. I drew things on paper. I cut things out of paper. I sculpted things. I drew a giant mural on my wall when I was a teenager. And little did I know that all this creativity was preparing me for an apprenticeship in wizardry. Now, my parents really didn't know what to do with me because I was the Energizer bunny of creativity. I was making things all the time. And I wanted these black light posters for my room, and I didn't have enough allowance money to actually order them online. And so I decided, I had this little set of black light paints, and I had some sketch paper that were, you know, as big as the posters. And I just copied the posters from the little catalog into these large pieces on my room. And so I got my blacklight posters without having to pay for them. Now, this is an example of the kind of thing that happens with people who are good manifestors all the time. You know you're going to get something, and you just figure out a way to do that. You know, and whether I had figured out how to get those same posters through another channel or made my own, it wouldn't have mattered. What mattered is that I ended up getting what I wanted. So let me just say this. You don't have to be an artist or a maker of any kind to get what you need out of this call. You just need to keep an open mind and recognize that creativity, whether it's the creativity of making art or making things, or simply the creativity of making your business, that's all that's required. Now, as I got older, I remember, I think I'm gonna switch you back to some slides, so hang tough for just 1 second. Here we go. This is my archetypal journey. No, you're not looking at it yet, so I'm still getting used to this webinar system that we're using, and there we go. I'm now gonna share my screen again. Here we go. Now you should be able to see my screen again. So I noticed as I got older that my ability to visualize things and then have them come into being was really profound. I'd do things like I even invented my own wacky rituals, like I'd stare into a candle flame and imagine the person that I was supposed to meet next week, and then like clockwork, I would actually meet them a few days later. And I want you to remember this because the manifestation process is consciously forgetting. I mean, one of the ways to do it is to consciously forget about what you've done to enjoin the thing that you want, and then allow your unconscious to sort your world out for you, right? So remember, the invisible world is what we're talking about, which is one step beyond the inner game. It involves your inner game, but it's one step beyond your inner game. So in my 20s, I made this pronouncement, and I said, I want to be a homeowner by the time I'm 30. And that was in the late 80s, when it was a time when home prices were such that a 20-something really couldn't dream of owning a home, you know, just especially right out, you know, like maybe owning a condo with another person and then stepping up, but just outright owning a home. You know, my parents were in no position to finance me. I didn't have money saved up. I was unstoppable, though. I called a real estate agent. I had her show me houses, and, you know, we looked at some houses and she did the math. And then she said, oh, you don't have enough money to own a house. And did I let that stop me? No. I said, that's okay. Let's just look at some houses anyway, right? Let's look at more. And I know that she thought I was nuts and was wasting her time, but she was a friend of a friend, and so she was willing to waste her time that way. And then I came into a lot of money quite by accident. And if you want to know the story about how that happened, you can listen to my TED Talk on it. You just Google my vertical gift. It's only 6 minutes long, but it will inspire you in numerous ways. And it outlines the miracle of how I survived an impossible fall down a 300-foot cliff inside of a car. Now, in addition to this practical aspect of doing magic, that's really enabled me to start and stop any job that I want to have in the world, and believe it or not, achieve success at it, right? Now, my dearest friends would often do fear-mongering, but they didn't know they were doing it. I forgive them. They would say, you can't do that. You can't just take off without a job. You can't move to a different city without having a career path in front of you. And I never believed them. I never did. And what I want to do for you is give you some definitions so that you understand how my world works, right? So here we go. A wizard is a person of either gender who's living their life in the way it was designed to be lived, with a balanced feeling of power and with the knowledge and skills to do things, blah, 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 that others might think impossible. To do things others might think impossible. Now, I used to say in this definition, to do the impossible, but then it's not impossible. You are following the same rules and regulations as everything else in the universe when you manifest what seems to be impossible. Now, there's very little that's actually impossible, but there is a high level of improbability to some things, and then you just have to make more magic to solve those. Now, magic is a set of tools and techniques that wizards can use to influence probability in the direction of what they desire. Now, when they do this effectively, it can seem like they're doing the impossible, but like I said, wizards are living by the same universal laws as everybody else. So you can't map it directly. You know, it is one of the laws of the universe that the human mind has the ability to influence probability in the direction of our desires. It's one of the unique things about the human mind. Later on, I'm going to give you some principles that wizards live by, and I want you to write these down because these will help you begin the journey. Now, it's important because learning to become a wizard is not about learning magic tricks or legerdemain. What most people consider magic is just, like I said, sleight of hand. or misdirection that fools you into thinking that something's true when it's actually not. And I think it's actually irresponsible for people to do that. And how many times in business does this actually happen, where, you know, people fool you into thinking that something's true when it's not? That's not what true wizarding is about at all. No, wizards can use some of the same techniques that magicians use, but learning to live in harmony with the laws of the universe, including the natural forces on the planet, is what will give you alternately the power that you desire. Now, I track modern scientific discoveries as a hobby, and I compare them to the wisdom that the metaphysical science has been saying for not just decades, but millennia. And what I've discovered is that modern science is just beginning to discover the very things that metaphysical science, or science beyond the physical, has been telling us for years. And one of the most famous and interesting is the notion of fractals. Now, science defines fractals as self-similarity regardless of scale. There's a more complicated definition, but this is essentially it, right? It's something that has the same that has the same kinds of features at a large scale or a small scale. So that what that means essentially is that if you zoom way out on a coastline in Google Maps, or if you look at this fractal close up or far away, then it's going to look similar, right? Zoom in or out of a coastline and it looks similar. Zoom in or out of one of these fractals, it looks similar. Now, this is relating to an ancient teaching in the magical world: as above, so below. As above, so below. And this is actually most often said in the longer form: that which is above is similar to that which is below. The original language most closely echoes, though, the language that's used by science to define fractals. Self-similarity, not self-sameness. It's similar, but not the same. So stay tuned for later in the webinar, where I teach you what you could study, 5 themes that you can study in the School for Wizards. And I'll tell you what they are, and then I'll tell you the sort of plain language versions of them. So manifestation, spells, incantations, rituals, and something mysterious called correspondences. Now, correspondences seem strange until you remember that which is above is similar to that which is below. There's a correspondence between above and below. And below is the mundane world where we live, and above, even though it's not really super directional like that, is the invisible world. So we study what is there by studying what is here. And I'll reveal the secrets to that a little later on. So magic is actually powerful technology, and the truth is, it's rare to find somebody who has actually mastered this technology. Leonardo da Vinci, whose image pictured here, is one of them. And actually, this is squaring the circle, the human being squaring the circle, which is a metaphysical lesson. Leonardo da Vinci was very deeply steeped in the kind of work that we do in the School for Wizards. So the first thing you need to remember is that all the power and the technology that you need is here now. And it's always been here. It's always been here in the present moment. So I want you to check if these things are true. So do you want to learn how to run your business ecologically, to live your life the way it was meant to be lived, right? For some of us, there is this feeling that something's wrong, and we hardly ever slow down enough to get what it is. But some part of that is, I'm not actually acting in balance and agreement in my world, and I want to change that. Also, you want to activate the power of love and its associated power, magnetism, to create a connection more powerful than any fear that you might have. Perhaps you want to be so empowered and sure of your purpose that you can serve your world without hesitation, and you want to activate your curiosity and creativity. And you want to be able to navigate the terrain of the invisible world to get you what you want in this one, right? You're navigating an invisible world in order to get what you want in this world. So remember, the wisdom that you need already exists to manifest whatever you want, to get whatever you want. The wisdom already is here. So it's actually compelling to act like everyone else and pretend that you're powerless, to wait inside with the football, thinking that it is not your turn to play, that you have no magical power. But I ask you, what is the eventual cost of living like that? It's yucky, isn't it? It's just yucky. So if you want to live your life the way it was meant to be lived and activate the power of love and magnetism to create this fearless connection and serve your people without hesitation and activate your creativity and navigate your invisible world, you're in the right place. So I use magical tools every day, but don't tell anyone, right? I use them every day to bring my gifts into the world, right? But I was in the past reluctant to teach magic and reluctant to say I taught magic when I did. And part of me would say, no, you can't do that. People aren't interested in the invisible world. Nobody will believe you. And then this other voice would come out of the blue and it would say things like, well, stuff works. Why aren't you teaching it? You're holding back is harming the world. And then I would talk back to the voice. Now, never do this because it will make you seem really crazy in public places. But I would say, can't you see I'm busy? I've got things to do. But apparently, spirit is stronger than me. Like big whoopee surprise to everyone but me, right? So I finally said yes. And the School for Wizards was born. And all I did in order to birth the School for Wizards is to say yes to my divine paradox. So it's like the paradox of the ever increasing step, the paradox of the round dice that can never actually land on a number. And it's like the paradox that is in the adjustment card for the tarot deck that I created for the School for Wizards here. And you can see the paradox. The paradoxical item is inside the clear cube on the left, lower left of the card. And it's a thing where it looks like there are going to be 2 prongs at the end if you look at the bottom, and there are actually 3 prongs when you look at the top. Now, there's a whole lot to explain about this card, which I will do later on, just to give you a little taste of what it's like to take a look at correspondences. But your life really is a collection of opposites. It's a paradox that doesn't demand to be reconciled, but it just begs to exist. And you can honor this paradox by stepping away from the mundane world that you might actually be doing right now, and then start to use your mind and body like they were built to be used. Now, we study spells and potions and incantations and rituals using their more common names: language patterns, personal intention, prayers, art, and ceremonies. And I designed the whole school to address this paradox, and it allows you to learn the wizarding skills that you should have been taught in high school. Now, I'm going to teach you some of those now. In this webinar, you don't have to sign up for anything. I'm going to teach you some principles, and those will be good. But I'll invite you into the School for Wizards, into one event for the School for Wizards later on in this webinar. And I think you'll be fascinated enough by it to check it out. Let's see. So there are rules and practices and ways of living that have been laid out for thousands of years, right? The keys to wizardry have been in plain sight. they don't even have to be dug up. But they're only available to those who are open to them, and those, as we say, who have eyes to see and ears to hear. Now, I'll tell you later how you can join up with me to learn what you need to know about claiming your wizardhood. And like I said in the first video, or like earlier in this video, wizards are equally men and women. It's not a gender-specific thing. So let me tell you some of the principles of being a wizard so that you don't have to wait. You can put these into practice right now. First, everything is alive. Now, it's easy to think everything is alive when you see these images of the formations of suns and galaxies. So-called primitive cultures are able to believe that the planet and the stars are alive. They anthropomorphized the stars, or made them human. But what if we reverse that? What if we believed that the stars were alive in their own way? Not that they were like us, but instead that we were perhaps like them. And what radical idea coming if the Earth was alive? Would you behave differently toward her if that's what you really believed? What good would it do you if you actually believed this? Now, what I'm talking about here is not just an intellectual notion that everything is alive, but to sit in your desk or on your chair or wherever you're sitting or lying right now and just put your hand on your heart and close your eyes and actually feel the throbbing, pulsating life that is around you, right? Maybe there is a wind blowing. Maybe the sun is shining. There is so much life around you everywhere. And we make this distinction that, okay, these plant things and these pet things or these wild animal things, they're alive, but yet everything else isn't. The stones or the earth is not alive, and certainly the sky or the ocean is not alive. They're just like inert mediums for something to happen in. But what if you actually believed that the whole universe was alive? Now, how is this going to help your business? It is going to help you by helping you understand that any action that you take in your business is an action that's going to be taken into a living, breathing entity called the universe. And so here's another thing that you can do as a wizard that will hugely increase your effectiveness in business. You must act as if you're responsible for everything that happens to you. Right? Now, let me just say that it might not be true that you are responsible for everything that happens to you, because Lord knows circumstances happen. But go with me for a moment on this and imagine how much more power you have to change a situation that you have if you acted as if you were the one responsible for it, right? So here's an example. You can say, why did this happen to me? And then you end up answering a question with like pointing a finger outside and blaming circumstances. Or you can say, what did I do to create this situation? Perhaps we can imagine this guy doing that, saying, what did I do to create this situation? And then when we do that, we have the power to change it. There's no way that we can have the power to change anything if we don't act as if we're responsible for the things that happen in our lives, right? I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying act as if it's true, and you get your power back. Third, you have to understand that all the power that ever was or will be is here now. Like, not in the last moment, not in the next moment, but in this moment right here. You've already got the power that you need to do what is given to you to do in this life. You draw from the same substance as the angels and the demons. And Napoleon Hill very smartly points this out in his book called Outwitting the Devil. and it's true. So fourth, there is a path and order to manifestation, and you must follow it. Any action or project or undertaking is possible. Now, if you don't follow the steps of this path of creation, you can't actually move forward. Like, have you ever noticed you'll sometimes start a project and then you'll just be dead in the water with it and you can't figure out why? Right? This method that actually we teach in the School for Wizards allows you to understand where in the process you've gone south. Right? There's a way that anything gets created. It's like bar none. Whether it's, you know, a chicken laying an egg or you building the Empire State Building. So the path of creation that I'm talking about teaches you how to move from inspiration to planning to action, right? And I just taught a weekend, last weekend, that was about manifestation, called The Secrets of Manifestation. And one of the things that I gave people as a handout that told them what was missing from the movie The Secret and what was missing from the book The Secret. What they left out, because they are talking about only one metaphysical law that happens in conjunction with many other metaphysical laws. So when we teach the path of creation in the School for Wizards, you learn what you need to do anything, right? If you don't actually follow the steps, you can't move forward. So understanding the path of creation actually allows you to create anything that you want, whenever you want it. Anything you want to create whenever you want it, right? Now that sounds a little impossible, but I'm going to tell you that over this last weekend, one of the participants, I have them write down 4 things that they want to manifest, and one is something that seems impossible to them, and one is something they've wanted for a long time, et cetera, et cetera. And this person came in on Sunday morning and said, well, I now have to do a new impossible thing, because my impossible thing happened this morning when I was on the way here. So what you think is impossible may not, in fact, be impossible. Right? So then the second path is the path to personal power. And this is the path of the power of spells, right? Spells are designed to change the path of probability toward what you want. And they're different from incantations because spells are addressed neither to another person nor a higher power, right? Learning this path to power will result in a technique to get clear and fast guidance on any subject. Because look, there are rules, laws, and practices and ways of living that have been laid out for thousands of years, right? The keys to the wizardry that we're talking about have actually been buried in plain sight for years. They don't even have to be dug up, but they're only available to those who are open to them. So I'll tell you a little bit later about how you can join up with me to learn what you need to know about reclaiming your wizardhood. Now, like I said in this webinar earlier on, women and men are equal, are totally equal. So we're going to study next, after the path of personal power, incantations. Right? We're going to tell you about incantations through the path of prayer. Right? There's actually a lost way of praying that was taken out of scriptures around the world around 2,000 years ago. And scientific research has now been done on the effectiveness of prayer, and more recently on the kind of prayer that's most effective. And following this incantatory path of prayer, you learn that you must make a model for what you want. The model makes a request to a higher power, and we'll learn all about the higher power that's less than the creator God, but simply exists to get us what we want. And it's designed to deliver what you've requested with your model. And also on this path, you learn, kind of what works best for getting results, right? You're going to learn how to protect yourself when you stir up these powerful forces in the universe, right? There are actions that you can take now that will protect you from the wrong stuff. So finally, you are going to learn about rituals. Rituals are another form of model that's been around for tens of thousands of years, and we are beginning to finally understand why rituals work. In their structure lies the key to modeling and then getting what you want. So I'll teach you in the School for Wizards the fivefold structure of every ritual that is designed to get you what you want. And finally, almost the most important thing is correspondences. Remember this thing of that which is above is similar to that which is below? Well, the reason for that is because there are correspondences that we need to learn about how our world is constructed that tell us about how the invisible world is constructed. So the correspondences is the path of invisible power. So studying the invisible is hard, right? It's invisible. So we have to have a model for studying it, right? These relationships between the visible and the invisible world are the correspondences. And I will lead you on a lesson on how they work in just a few moments. So let me remind you that the magical teachings that I'm sharing with you are they're not pulled out of a hat. They're not invented whole cloth by me. They're not like a 5-step system that I channeled from the ether. They actually come from powerful teachings that have gone throughout the ages. And the thing that I have done is actually created a way for you to understand them so that you don't have to put your nose into ancient texts for, 30 years like I have. Now, people like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, King Solomon, Greek philosophers like Plato and Pythagoras, and leaders throughout time and history, people who would actually really surprise you, have used this system to create successful lives using essentially the same wizard skills that are available to all of this. And they didn't do this because they were great. They studied this to become great. And when you look at great people, they're really a lot like you and me. And there are usually a couple of things that are on the surface different. But what's really different is who they are at the deepest level. And this is the level that the School for Wizards actually invites people into, right? I don't think you have to study with the School for Wizards to get this deep level of understanding about who you are. It's a great way to do it, but I am dedicated in this world to bringing magic back into the world. And I also want you to remember that it doesn't take an extraordinary intellect or extraordinary compassion or extraordinary physical strength to be a wizard. What it does take is commitment to learning what needs to be learned. So I'm now going to teach you a little bit about correspondences. So remember, as above, so below. Right? For hundreds of years, the tarot has been a sort of pictorial dictionary of the secrets of the ancients. It's even said that a human being on a deserted island can learn everything she needs to know about the world so long as she has a pack of tarot cards. Now, there are many correspondences with each of the tarot trump cards. Some have letters associated with them. Some have an astrological sign or element. And each of these correspondences creates a puzzle that you put together. Now, the correspondences in the tarot are literally keys to understanding the invisible world and how it operates. Now, I'm going to choose a card right now to play with you. We just have to get through a few slides. In fact, I'm going to just find it so we don't have to go through all those slides. Let's take this, for example. So here are 3 cards the Empress, Judgment, and the Moon. And we're only going to take one of these cards. And we're going to take the one on the right, which is the Moon, because it's got several symbols in it that we can understand as associated with the modern world, right? You've got, in this card, you've got a moon that's shining down on a mountain in the back. And that same moon is illuminating these two spiral towers that sort of guard this gateway to the mountain. And in the front, there is a sort of still reflecting pool. And in this still reflecting pool is a black lobster. Black lobster holding up his little claws, or big claws rather. And surrounding this pond is a wolf who's howling at the moon, it seems, and a dog who is looking directly at us. So if we consider that the moon is a representation of Pisces, which is on the left, and I'm not going to do all of the correspondences of this card because it would take us too long. But we can see that the moon is in some ways about the depths. It's about the reflected world. It's about the world that exists in the nighttime, but is still illuminated enough to get around in. And the moon is also about the animal instincts, right? Some wild animal instincts and some animal instincts that are more tame, like the dog. And they are at the service of this creature that lives in the depths. Now, there can be some danger in wandering around in the moonlight instead of in the bright light of day. You might not be able to see what you wanted to see, what was available to see. And what you might not know is the mountain that's in the distance is actually Mount Kailash, which is the most sacred mountain. It's sacred to 5 different religions, and it's the least visited of any sacred site in the world because it is so high. And circumnavigating Mount Kailash results in the removal of an entire lifetime of karma. So if you want to remove a lifetime of karma, you just go to Mount Kailash and circumnavigate it, but be prepared to take your altitude sickness medication when you go there because it's very, very high up. So I want to let you know that the moon is also, if we apply this to your business, you'll notice that in your business, there are some subterranean things that you have to actually work to notice. So if we apply the moon card and this tiny little, pensured creature that lives in the bottom, this Piscean creature, then we see that that there's an incredible depth that's available here. So think of this in terms of your business. What in your business is deep and mysterious that you have not yet explored? Maybe there are problems with the employees, right? Maybe they're unhappy. Maybe they're deeply unhappy, and you don't know it. Maybe you are being called to a deeper level of the work that you're actually doing. Maybe you've got the light shining through this tower, and you need to make a journey, go on a journey, so that you can actually discover what the next phase or step of your business is. The moon encourages us to look deeply within, to understand what we've to understand what you've got going at the depths rather than wandering around on the surface. And also, what's at the depths could potentially frighten you. It could potentially be dangerous for your business, so it's useful to look there. But it's also useful not to get trapped there, right? You want to be able to go and visit the moon, get its gifts, and then come back out whenever you need to. So I want to tell you a little bit about the School for Wizards. And I want to say that you can't be blamed for not knowing all of this or not knowing how to use the engine of creativity that's inside of you, because I'm going to stop sharing this in just a moment so that we can get back to just, I want to be able to see you and interact with you. So there we go. So I want to, this is a funny picture. So there are limits that your conscious mind has, and even limits to your invisible game. Nobody sent an owner's manual with how to operate this thing, right? At least that's what they told us, right? There actually is an instruction manual for you to use, and I'll give you an example. When you learn, when you were a baby, you learned by filtering and generalizing and distorting information. You know, some many billions of bits of information are trying to get in through your senses at all times. Some of those are magical bits of information that we've been told are incorrect or not right or just not valid. Like, how many of you had an invisible friend when you were a child and talked to that invisible friend all the time, and then you finally stopped talking to the invisible friend because you believed that it didn't exist anymore? And why did you believe that? Because your parents told you that that was true, right? Your parents told you, or some adult told you, no, your invisible friend doesn't exist. But what you did through your entire babyhood is go, oh, well, this thing is like that, so I'm going to just put those into a general category. Or this thing is not important, so I'm just going to delete it from my perception. Or this thing doesn't quite fit with this other thing, so I'm just going to tweak it in my mind a little bit to make it fit in correctly. And I'll give you a couple of examples of this. When the Spanish ships came to the Americas, the indigenous people literally could not see them. They knew that there was something wrong with the horizon. They could tell there was something wrong there, but they literally could not see the ships. And it took the medicine man, who was used to exploring new areas of consciousness, to point out what was happening. And when the medicine man said, look, here's what's happening, here's what we can see, then the tribe was able to see. Another example of this is when the pygmies were first taken out of the rainforest and into the plains of Africa, and they saw the rhinoceros and the giraffe and the lion in the distance, in the great distance of the plain. They started laughing their heads off. And the reason they were laughing their heads off is that they'd never seen such tiny animals, because the closest, the furthest they could get away from an animal in the rainforest was about 100 feet, because you've got trees and jungle separating you from, you just can't see that far in the distance. So the only solution was that those animals were very tiny. So magical education helps you understand more about the world that you have deleted, distorted, and generalized away. Now, the problem is that the original sources for all this stuff use all this arcane language that most people don't even understand it anymore. And I've dusted off the owner's manual, and then I've translated it into common everyday language. I can actually talk about magic in a really practical way, and people get it. And I've created a set of practices that will let you use your creation engine, like the thing that creates stuff, that's your birthright, right away. So here's one of the ways that we can do this. What we can do is get a better relationship with nature. Remember, everything is alive. We need to understand and have a real experience of that. So I've created an event where that can happen, and it's called the School for Wizards Vision Quest Retreat. Now, here's the thing. You get to be in touch with this visible world that you haven't been really in touch with. You also get to practice spells and incantations and prayers, asking for what you want, and especially asking for your soul to reveal what it wants from you. Right? All this learning and filtering creates a situation where we often can't tell anymore what our soul is telling us, right? We're going to learn what's stopping you from getting the wealth that you want. You're going to learn specific practices and exercises that will deliver it to you. And you will begin your transformation into a person who is capable of practicing magic and getting magical things done. So the School for Wizards, Vision Quest Retreat is for you if you are tired of just having things be the way they are and you can't figure out how to get them. If you're tired of not being able to show up as yourself in your business, if you are tired of not being able to understand what it is that you're doing that's actually creating the result that you're getting. Now, this retreat happens in a beautiful place called Manzanita Village that's in between Los Angeles and San Diego in the United States, and it happens the first week of May, May 2nd through the 7th. Monday's a travel day, Sunday's a travel day, and it's for a limited number of people. So there's an exclusivity to the School for Wizards that means that I only take a certain number of people in. And this retreat is going to blow your socks off, I promise. And not only am I taking only a limited number of people, but I'm charging only $2,500 for this retreat. And for you, on this webinar today, because you're all collected together and I can talk to all of you at once, you only need pay $1,000 for the retreat. Now, here's the thing. A lot of times people will say, oh, it's $1,000, but you have to do room and board on top of that, and it's a little extra. Well, what if I said that $1,000 included your room and your board? All of it. What would you say then? $1,000, room and board, beautiful retreat center, and this retreat center is on 80,000 acres of public land. It abuts 80,000 acres of public land, and you'll be spending at least 24 hours out in that nature determining what your soul wants. And I really invite you to come and join me, and it's going to be totally amazing. because your soul has something that it wants to share with you, and you've probably not been in touch with that at all. So think about that, and think about how important it is to you to show up in the world with your true gifts rather than just going through the motions. And I'd like you to consider joining me. And you can actually join by sending an email to me at sage@theschoolforwizards.com. Send an email to sage@theschoolforwizards.com. Within the subject line, say Vision Quest. And I will have a personal conversation with you to see if you are a fit for the School for Wizards Vision Quest retreat. So there you have it. It's been wonderful spending this time with you this afternoon, and I really, really appreciate you and love the time that we get to spend together. And that's all for now. Bye for now.